This talk is for Adler Graduate School, course number 511, Introduction to Individual Psychology. A variety of measures and semi-structured interviews have been developed to assess the individual psychology concept of style of living. This talk will discuss several of them. There is also a handout to accompany this talk. It is available on the course page. Adler identified several general principles for, quote, investigating the system of a psychological disorder along the path which the patient himself has taken, close quote. First and foremost, he emphasized, quote, artistic and intuitive empathy with the essential nature of the patient, end quote. He identified three guiding principles, which he called orienting devices for his observations. First, he started with the assumption that the style of living was decided upon by the person in the aggravated conditions of his or her childhood. And he goes on to mention organ inferiority, pressure in the family, pampering, rivalry, and a neurotic family tradition as examples of possible aggravations. Second, he believed that movement through life is movement toward a personally defined ideal or goal. Third, he emphasized looking for the largest common denominator for all expressive movements, which seems to me to be a precursor of Dreiker's point of line process, which we talked about in an earlier talk. In his discussion of expressive behavior and symptoms, Adler emphasized the way the person approaches the task of therapy and the relationship with the therapist. He focused especially on the ways the person avoids engaging in a cooperative manner. In discussing symptoms, he emphasized the uniqueness of the symptoms the person has selected and the connection between the symptom and the individual's struggle to reach a chosen goal. Adler recognized the impact that a physical illness of the person or of the person's siblings or parents has on their developmental process. He also believed that a person's genetic endowment, which he called organ inferiority, was also a potentially major factor in development. Finally, Adler pointed out the need to verify any understanding the therapist has come to, a process I call hypothesize and verify, and that we have discussed in a previous talk. Adler identified 5 trustworthy methods for understanding the person: early recollections, birth order position, childhood illnesses, dreams, and the exogenous factor that precipitated the neurosis. He also presented several versions of guidelines for an interview, some for children and some for adults. He emphasized the informal nature of these guides and warned that rigid adherence could easily be destructive of the investigative process. The handout for this talk includes one of the adult guides. The use of early recollections in personality assessment is arguably the most significant contribution of individual psychology to the understanding of people. Adler recognized that each of us selects what we remember based on our current personality and situation. As he said, quote, out of the incalculable number of impressions which meet an individual, he chooses to remember only those which he feels, however darkly, to have a bearing on his situation, end quote. There is an extensive literature on the use of early recollections in assessment, and you will have an opportunity to learn much more about this assessment process in courses to come. There are a number of semi-structured interviews to identify lifestyle. I think the ones that are used the most are Powers and Griffith, 2012, and Shulman and Mozak, 1988. For example, the sibling rating exercise that you did in Unit 3 is from Shulman and Mozak. My experience is that these interviews are more alike than they are different, even though some emphasize one factor or another more than the others. These are the 6 essential factors of a lifestyle interview to me. I discussed personality priorities in an earlier talk. Now I want to give you a bit more detail about the measures for these personality priorities. Jackwell and Brown's semi-structured interview to identify the personality priority of a person uses body language and physical attitude, gut response, chronic hassle, and a resource inventory to identify a personality priority, and a backdoor test to verify the priority identified by the interview. A Q-sort is an interview that uses a series of items that are on cards. In the Adlerian Personality Priorities Q-sort, there are 48 items. The cards are sorted by the subject into a normal distribution ranging from agree to disagree, essentially creating an individualized factor analysis of the 48 items. This sorting places the subject in one of 6 personality priority categories. The Allen Assessment of Adlerian Personality Priorities has 190 items and several validity studies. The Adlerian Assessment of Personality Priorities has 30 items and 1 validity study. And the Langenfeld Inventory of Personality Priorities has 75 items and 5 subscales, instead of the 4 proposed by Kiefer based on their factor analysis. The LIP, Langenfeld Inventory of Personality Priorities, has been used in a number of research studies. The Basis A is a questionnaire that has 65 items, each beginning with the stem, quote, "When I was a child, I," end quote. The purpose of the Basis A is to help people understand how an individual's beliefs developed in early childhood contribute to one's problem-solving strategies and effectiveness in social, work, and intimate relationships. The Basis A inventory measures 5 major themes or interpersonal styles: belonging social interest, going along, taking charge, wanting recognition, and being cautious. 5 additional support scales, referred to as help scales, are used to enhance the understanding of the major interpersonal styles. These are harshness, entitlement, liked by all, striving for perfection, and softness. The Basis A has been used extensively in research and clinical practice.